Okay, well, if you stayed with us this far, thanks so much for joining us as we make our way. I'm going to kill you. Hey everyone, this is the first part of Invisible Gamer's three-part Mother3 special podcast. I'm Michael Burns, the editor-in-chief of Invisible Gamer and resident Mother3 expert, and with me I have... Go ahead and introduce yourselves, ladies.
I'm Austin, also from Invisible Gamer, one of the staff writers here. Check out Retro Weekend.
And I'm Seth, also part of the Invisible Gamer team. And yeah, let's get into it.
You guys have some deep voices for ladies.
That's
That was just a joke. This just a joke. Okay. So today we're talking about Mother3, which is pretty much my favorite RPG of all time, if not my favorite game of all time. I'm still not sure on that. And the reason we're sitting here together talking about this game is that I basically told Austin and Seth that they had to play the game or they were fired from the site.
Yeah, it was brutal. I cried. He
Yeah.
was very mean. It almost felt like a New Year's resolution to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to say, like, I kind of realized as I was going through my Twitter feed that Mother3 is actually the first game I've beaten every year for the past 2 years. That's not the case this year because we actually have this like structured thing that we're doing, and so I stopped where you guys stopped, and I've beaten some other games now. But yeah, it's like it's funny. It always ends up being a New Year's game to me.
Yeah.
But you guys aren't going to be fired. Mostly though, just because you bought the game and now we're doing it. No, but seriously, we're going to try something new here, for us anyway. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to cover the first 3 chapters of the game today. Full-on spoilers, though, so if you don't want that, turn away now. And then we'll just pepper in some music from the parts of the game we're talking about throughout the podcast. So let's do it. So what do you guys think about the game so far? Before we get into the specific chapters and etc.
Well, I recently played Earthbound back in 2014. So Earthbound's pretty fresh in my mind. And picking up this, it just like... It feels very Earthbound, but it feels so much more like refined and polished in a lot of ways. And it also... The way Earthbound like kind of felt like it did a lot of new things for the RPG genre. This also feels like it does a lot of like different things that are really interesting. For one, like so many RPGs are about like globetrotting and going all over the place, and especially in these first 3 chapters, like you're really kind of focused on like this one town and what's going on with it. And I found that really interesting. Um, and it also like it doesn't force characters in your party just so you have new characters. It kind of jumps around to different sets of people and gives you their part of the story instead of just like forcing everyone to come together. It's kind of showing how the pieces will come together in a full story.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool and really different. Something you're not used to even today.
What about you, Seth?
Well, I guess in terms of first reactions, I'll just start with that. And right away, I was just really impressed and in love with the pixel art and the music in the game.
Yeah, the
It's
art is
just
like so fine. Like
yeah, it's so detailed and it's just really really nice, and it pops, and it's really really good colors, and there's so many little details within the game. And I think right when I was first playing it, I sent Michael a picture of when you're all covered in soot from this one part in the first chapter, and if you go get in the little baths that kind of replenish your health, you your character gets in the water, and then when they get out, like from the head down, they're all clean, and then their head's still all dirty. And it's like
I
such a little touch, but it just made me laugh really, like it was just really nice. And stuff like
yeah,
that is just goes a long way for me.
I started
Um,
cracking up at that part.
One of the things that I'm super impressed with along those lines, because the game is full of things like that, where there's things that you don't have to do, and
Right.
the game is prepared for it. I don't know at the beginning, when Hinawa tells Lucas to go back up and put on his clothes, get out of his pajamas and put on his clothes. But if you say no, she says something along the lines of, well, then you can stay inside and stay in your pajamas for the rest of your life, or something like that. It's just like, there's just so many neat little touches like that where you can just really appreciate, how much they put into the game. So
The music seems much more polished and produced than Earthbound did. And I don't know if Hip Tanaka worked on this one,
no.
but like no. Okay, that makes sense because like his style is very oblique and kind of like strange, very electronic, and Earthbound has a lot of strange like atmospheric stuff. And there's some stuff like that in Mother 3, but a lot feels just a lot more rhythmic based, and that kind of goes into the combat, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
The composer, by the way, is Shogo Sakai, which we actually talked about that on our Christmas podcast. Sounds like you've forgotten. Seems like it's been a long time, but it really hasn't. Not even a month. But that's okay. Yeah, I love this game. It's actually one of only 3 RPGs I've played through more than once, and actually I've probably played it 4 or 5 times at this point. I always find something new every time I play, and I found some new things this time. So
Awesome.
yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to give a brief introduction to each chapter, and then just sort of discuss the events of each chapter, the art, the music, and whatever else comes to our mind that we appreciated about the game as we were playing. But first, we should probably talk about what Mother 3 is, though, right? Just in case you haven't heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mother 3 is the 3rd game in a series we know here in the U.S. as Earthbound, though, of course, we only got one game in the series here, which was Earthbound, a.k.a. Mother 2 on the SNES. Mother 3 came out almost 9 years ago on Game Boy Advance, April 20th, 2006, according to Wikipedia. So mark your calendars. The big 10-year anniversary next year. It's going to be a party in Times Square. I'm going to rent Times Square out.
It's gonna be released in the U.S. officially.
That would make sense. I hadn't considered that.
That would be great.
We should probably campaign for that. We should show up at Reggie's house.
Yes.
But the development of the game actually goes way back beyond 2006, because it was originally going to be a Super Famicom game with Shigeru Miyamoto and Satoru Iwata producing. And at some point, the dev team decided they wanted to transition development to the N64. They basically hoped they could do the same thing to Mother that Super Mario 64 did to the Mario series. But ultimately their design ended up just being too much for the N64 hardware. There's a really fantastic and super long interview that we'll link to in the show notes, but it's from August 2000, right before Space World, where fans were eagerly looking forward to seeing more about the game, and basically in this interview, Mother series creator and writer Shigesato Itoi, along with Satoru Iwata and Shigeru Miyamoto, discuss Nintendo's decision to cancel the game, and it's sort of a fascinating read because you're witnessing, these 3-star Nintendo developers basically admitting that the Nintendo 64 wasn't the dream machine they'd been selling it as, and that trying to push forward with the game under those conditions would have had a drastically negative impact on the development of the GameCube as well. So seriously, highly recommended. Read it.
And the interesting thing was the game was shown. The game was shown off to the public. I think 1999. So fans who were eager for this, they got to see that it really was being made. There was something there, and then it didn't come through.
Yeah, I think you can actually see a video, compilation video, maybe just a preview on Lost Levels of the N64 version.
According to the interview, they had a good amount of it done. It wasn't just it was scrapped work 10%. They had a good amount finished.
Yeah, I think that they said 50%, but 50%, it's a lot, but it's also not a lot. I mean, it's nowhere near being finished. The most interesting thing to me in that interview is they make a statement early in the discussion about how they could have put a positive spin on the announcement and could have said something like, we can't finish this now, but if we're ever able to come back to it, we will. But they decided not to say something like that, not to sort of appease the fans with a lie, because doing so would be irresponsible, because, at that time, they just weren't planning on going back to it. They didn't see it as, they didn't see a way to make it happen. But let's not go into that too much, because we actually do have the game, because it was finished on the Game Boy Advance, and you can play it right now. Right, guys? Everyone can play it around the world?
Yeah.
Nintendo released it everywhere?
I mean, mine's on right now.
Not exactly. I mean, you kind of got to go through some dark alleys, some
that's
midnight runs, and
you got to pay off some people and do some things that your kids might not be happy to hear about in the future.
Seth, you don't have to talk about it. Don't have to.
Oh, okay. Let's not get into that again.
Yeah, but this game never came out anywhere other than Japan, right?
Yeah.
Sadly. Jinx.
Okay, well, you're both unjinxed because we're doing a podcast right now.
Okay. Thank you. Could have been bad.
What are you guys playing on, by the way? Are you guys both have? We all have carts, actually. We all have the fan translation on a cart.
Correct.
But what hardware are you guys all playing on?
I'm playing on a DS Lite.
Uh-huh.
Legend of Zelda DS Lite.
Oh, aren't you special? That's cool. I don't have that. There you go. That's something you can hold over me.
Good. I'm gonna take a picture of it right now.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm doing the same on a DS Lite.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a Game Boy Advance, or a couple of them, but it's just so much brighter on the DS Lite.
You gotta get an SP with a backlit screen. The second model. It's so gorgeous on there. It's funny, whenever I start this game, I go back and forth between the sort of, I guess, 4 different hardware options. I have 5 actually. Game Boy Player, DS Lite, GBA SP, my modded GBA, and then a Game Boy Micro. And this time I just settled on the SP because it looks the best on the SP, the backlit SP.
Yeah.
Nintendo apparently would rather joke about killing their fans with fire than releasing this game.
Yeah.
But there are some reasons for that. Really, only one I can think of that I think is keeping them from releasing it here. But we'll get into that at the end of this episode. Not to belittle the issue, but I guess we should start moving on. So
okay, let's do it.
Okay, so let's get into what we've all experienced of the game so far. So the prologue for the game starts off with that sort of prototypical mother setup where Lucas wakes up, goes downstairs, and there's nobody else in the house except Hinawa, his mother. And even though you obviously realize from the character naming screen that there's a full family somewhere in the game, Lucas's twin brother Claus, the father Flint, and even the dog Boney, or whatever you chose to name them. I think Mother3 gives you intentional vibes of Earthbound, misleadingly so, where the dad was absent and the only time you ever heard about him was over the phone. So it subverts your expectations pretty early. So you go outside and you see Claus and his grandfather Alec, who is Hinawa's father, playing with a family of Dragos, which are these T-Rexes basically, and you immediately pick up on two really interesting things about the characters in the game. And the first is that they have a harmonious relationship with nature. These little boys are charging headlong into these ferocious-looking dinosaurs, basically, and to the Dragos, it's a game, and they love it, and they play along. They like pretend to fall over, and then they get up. And
I was so scared at that spot. I was like, "Oh God, why are you gonna do this? You're gonna die!" And no, they were just having a good old time.
Yeah. You get to, as you get to know more of the characters, you realize, not just Lucas and Claus and Hinawa and Flint, but everybody in their village, Tasmily. You sort of realize they're just basically a really poor community, but a really strong one because of the way they rely on and interact with nature. And I'm sure you guys have probably picked up on the way that is starting to change throughout the first 3 chapters, right? I mean, it's not even subtle. It pretty much happens almost right away.
Yeah, certain situations are definitely apparent that things are changing, and it's not really for the best.
So the second thing you gather from the prologue is that Lucas and Claus are basically two sides of the same coin. Claus is sort of a fearless go-getter. Lucas is kind of meek and timid. In fact, if you wander around Tasmily and talk to the neighbors, I guess in Chapter 1, you'll see that Lucas has a reputation for being a crybaby. People are actually kind of really mean to him, or about him anyway, which is kind of funny. But I don't think that they really mean anything by it. They just sort of gossip a little bit. They kind of rag on him. But I think you guys will start to appreciate the differences between the two brothers more as you play further into the game. But I don't want to go there until you've gotten to the end of the game. And also something I noticed for the first time tonight, which makes me feel really stupid, is that Lucas and Claus's names are spelled with the same exact set of letters, which is pretty cool. Drives the point home more that they're two sides of the same coin. Anyway, you get into your first battle, which doesn't last very long, and then the kids and their grandfather go back to the house for dinner. The prologue ends with the reading of a very sweet letter from Hinawa to Flint about the differences between the two boys, and the family prepares to head home to their ranch where Flint is waiting for them. So what did you guys think of the prologue? Obviously, this was your first experience of Mother3, so I'd just love to hear what your first major reactions were to it before we continue on to Chapter 1.
Well, I definitely saw the similarities, like you touched on, to Earthbound, and how the games start in your house and waking up and talking to your mom. And I definitely did kind of think about the father similarities, and maybe that was going to be the case here. But I think that I love the way that the Mother games are so kind of small town focused, um, and not kind of this humongous, some type of global battle, wartime, humongous events, and you're somehow the most important person in it. Um,
Well, I got bad news for you then.
well, I mean, it can build to that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that most games or a lot of RPGs, throw you right in the middle of that from the beginning, and I think you know in within the first three chapters of this game and throughout Earthbound 2, I like the small town feel with these games and kind of they establish that really well in the prologue, and that sense of humor with the Mother series is key throughout this first prologue too. And I think we were talking about the dinosaurs, the Dragos, pretty much, and you see them and you kind of assume that maybe you're going to have to fight them and that's going to be your first battle and yada yada, but then you end up like fighting this tiny little cricket, which is like the opposite of a T-Rex. And that kind of happens, I think, in Earthbound too, with the little bug that ends up being your buddy, but
For a minute.
For a minute, yeah, until he gets sadly swatted. But
Yeah. Oh, that was so.
I just
But we're
yeah,
not
I
talking
just
about
think
that game. Go ahead.
yeah, I just think it's great. I think it's such a subtle joke where you see this T-Rex and then all of a sudden you're fighting the opposite of one, and it's this vicious little cricket. It's just hilarious, and it's just a really sweet introduction to the world and the characters. It was really nice. Yeah.
Well, actually, I have good news for you too. That he comes back,
Oh, okay.
challenges you again, and
Fantastic.
it continues to be as charming as before, if not a little more. Something I actually forgot to mention in the notes, which is my one of my strongest takeaways from the prologue is actually after you have the letter read, Hinawa's letter, you see this spaceship fly by, and it's playing this song that sounds sort of like a national anthem, and it's like obviously we don't know whose anthem that is, why this thing is here, but yeah, it's got this really great mystery where obviously things we'll talk about in a minute. Things start happening in and around the town that you have to wonder why they're happening to this place specifically.
Right.
Austin, thoughts on the prologue? Other than you just really loved the art and the polish and the.
I mean, that was the first thing I texted to you.
Yeah.
After I started playing it.
I could say one more little thing. And hands down, Mother series always has the most creative save points in an RPG, which I love.
Oh yeah, the frogs.
The frogs and the phone in the last one, and it's just it'd be so easy to put a little dot and have no explanation for a save point, but they just somehow magically make it believable, and they didn't need to ever, but it's great and hilarious.
I love that the frog explains memories.
Totally.
And
right.
Yeah. And I also love that one day I was on Twitter and I saw Seth saying to give his regards to the next frog I meet. He didn't say that directly to me. He just sort of said it on Twitter, and I smiled.
Well, it was on New Year's Eve when I knew everyone was partying. I told everyone to be safe out there and give their regards to the next frog they meet.
Yeah, that made me smile.
Oh, I do have one thing.
Oh, you have something to contribute finally. Jesus, 40 minutes in. I'm just kidding.
I couldn't dash. It took me forever to learn how.
Oh, it took me too. I kept tapping B.
It told me to go and dash in this Drago, and yeah, I couldn't do it because it's like you just hold B and then let go, and then I was tapping B and it wasn't working, and then I was trying to move the control pad while pressing B, that wasn't working. I made it much more difficult than it should be.
Yeah, I was actually kind of frustrated with dashing too, because I thought that I could just hold down B and run like in most RPGs or something, but I was like, man, why do I just have to do it this way? But now I actually really enjoy it because I can, when you're running through like the dungeons and stuff, it's nice because you continually run from each room, which is like really nice. Yeah. You don't have to press it again. But at first I was like, what the heck? This is frustrating, but grown to love it.
It's another way they streamline stuff.
Yeah, you can also use it if you're like overpowered when you are in a dungeon for whatever reason. You can also use it to just ram through enemies without having to fight them.
Yeah, I did that to a couple people. I think
you did that like to Allison and Clementine.
Yeah, I just ran right through them.
Like
I was like, it's dinner time. I'm hungry.
You're like, it's Mother3 time. I gotta practice. So chapter one flips the switch immediately, and it's basically the beginning of the end for this little foothills community. So right off the bat, you've got a conflict. The Sunshine Forest to the north of Tasmania Village is on fire, and we don't know exactly why yet. But we do know that the fire was started on purpose, and we suspect it's probably related to that
spaceship,
to that UFO we saw earlier.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we actually
it's in my head.
We actually just heard that, so that's probably why it's fresh in your head.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think so.
What did you guys think about that? Like that open? It's just like immediately you've got this little guy running around, like his legs are kicking up like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and he's like got this little handheld, siren. Completely different. Completely different vibe from
Thomas, right?
Thomas, yeah.
Thomas. Yeah.
It was exciting. You knew something was going down, like right now, and it like you said, it's a completely different change of pace compared to what the prologue set forth, and you kind of don't really get a sense. At least I didn't like what time this was. Like, was this exactly taking place right after it, or was it? Yeah.
But you discover that as the chapter goes on.
Yeah.
I also want to take a second to point out, since we discussed this during the prologue, that you're now controlling Flint, the father of Lucas and Klaus. It turns out he wasn't as absent as previous fathers in the Mother series had been. He was actually just home tending to the livestock while his wife and kids took a little mini vacation. That's a little different for this series.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't expecting it totally. I assumed that I was just going to be Lucas, or whatever your name is in the game, but for the entire game, just like you were asked pretty much in the last one, and actually still thought that I was, but then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm just going to play the dad until he meets back up with the family, and then I'll take over as Lucas. So yeah, that was the first time that I was like, oh, throw him for a little bit of a loop here.
Yeah.
Which is fun. It was exciting, You don't really know what to expect.
Have either of you guys played Mother at all? The first game?
No.
I have not.
I don't love it, honestly.
I heard it's really rough.
Well, it's hard. It's very similar to Earthbound in structure, and like almost to the point of, I mean, it even has the same music, just NES versions. It's almost to the point that it's the same game, but with a slightly different story. But yeah, it's got that same thing with the dad being, only there via telephone, and so I definitely think this was done consciously to throw fans for a loop.
Yeah.
But anyway, your first task as Flint is to help put out this fire, and then you realize that Flint's friend, Lighter, and Lighter's son, Fuel, who didn't set the fire, by the way, even though they have the perfect names.
They're implied.
It's implied, yeah. You realize that they're both missing, so you rush out to their house in the forest, and you find Lighter on the way. He confirms Fuel is still trapped in their house. But as you head out there to rescue him from the house, you start to see some pretty weird things in the forest. Right, guys?
Yeah. All the animals, they're not normally angry.
Well, they're not just angry either. Like there's like a moose that has like metal plates.
A cyborg.
Metal
Yeah,
plates.
it's like
Yeah, they're all like half metal, or not all of them, but
it's like a Terminator moose. Termusator? No, never mind. Moosinator.
And then I mean, just kind of going into this area, you walk through the town, and it's kind of getting to what we were at before. Like, you realize like how close knit this town is too. It's like everybody seems to be trying to gather people around to help figure out what's going on, and you know, just do the right thing. And that's kind of nice to see. And the shop, can you go in the shop at this time, or is that later?
Later.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about it later.
Well, yeah, and there's some nice things here where kind of bouncing off what Austin was saying, but you know, some characters that you meet and talk to, and they don't necessarily introduce all the characters or how you know them or what your relationship is to them. They just kind of start talking to you, and you start to realize who's friends, or you know, all these things. And I like when that's done, you know, in TV or movie shows and stuff like that. It kind of adds another little layer of, I guess I know this person, or these two people know each other, and maybe we'll figure out why, or something like that. That was nice too. I like that, how they do that.
Did you guys notice the as you're heading into the forest, when you stop at the prayer sanctuary? Did you notice the two people next to the sanctuary that are Bud and Lou, the comedy duo? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is this where the little like stone building that the thing talks to you and breaks the
fourth wall and tells you you have to go in and
no, I didn't notice
to go
that
in
duo,
and give them your actual name, the player's name. You didn't talk to them?
Yeah.
I must have. I don't remember it though.
Well, they have these interactions throughout the game, and certainly multiple times through the chapters that you guys have played. But they're basically the comedy duo, and they always it always ends, I think, with one of them hitting the other because it wasn't really a funny joke. But and
then they take a bow.
Yeah, they take a bow. But your first interaction with them is one of those things that you guys might not have picked up on, where you're talking to them and they're like, "Stop hitting that thing. Stop pressing that thing. You're making me sick."
It's when you hit your button.
It's when you press
the dialogue.
Yeah, it's when you press the button. It's just yeah, it's super funny. But we're really doing a bang up job here, guys.
We diverted off course.
Yeah,
we didn't go straight for the fire.
That's fine. We're crashing and burning right now. See what I did there? See what I did there? I brought it right back to the fire. But besides the angry animals, though, you also see something else in the forest, which is the
pig guys, right?
Pig guys. I think there might be just one at first, but they've got this little box that they are opening up and releasing these, like this little metal box they're releasing bugs from. Like, why do they need to keep these? What kind of bugs would be kept in a metal box, first of all? And then these bugs, basically, I think, are what causing the fire, right?
Yeah.
I think they're like fire bugs, basically.
Fireflies, maybe.
But on the topic of the pig masks, though, Seth, have you played through Earthbound? Have both of you played through that game?
Yes, remember I got all the way to the end, but I couldn't beat it because I can't go back. So, But yes, I have.
And Austin, I can't remember. You finished it, right?
Yeah, I finished
so,
it, yes.
Are you guys seeing any parallels or maybe connections to that game? Anything that these guys might remind you of at all?
You mean aesthetically, or just
any kind of tenuous connection? Porky.
Porky.
Porky. Yes, your well, not your best friend, but your accomplice at the very beginning of Earthbound.
Yeah.
Your nemesis.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he's.
Are you doing some foreshadowing, maybe?
Maybe, but I don't know. But if you didn't even get to the final boss in Earthbound.
No, I did.
Okay,
I did. Yes.
And it's Porky.
Right.
At first, but Porky's part of it. But anyway, okay, so things are turning dark in the story pretty quickly, but this little episode with the fire ends in success as you reunite lighter and fuel and get them to safety. A rain starts to fall and puts out the fire, but that doesn't change the fact that these really strange things have just happened. And to make matters worse, Flint's family seems to be MIA. Hinawa, Lucas, and Claus were supposed to have been home hours ago and hours earlier, and I guess it's feasible that they could be trapped on their way through the forest because of the fire. But what were you guys' immediate thoughts when Flint made it home to find the pigeon with Hinawa's letter, but no Hinawa and no kids?
The fact that when the prologue ends, the whole letter reads, and it kind of is just like this heartwarming thing, like, this wife really cares about her family and stuff, and just letting them know they're going to be reunited in a little bit. And that letter like ends basically saying like they're going to be home by nightfall or sundown, and then the whole letter reads again when Flint gets it, and you're like, it's past night.
Yeah.
And we just saw some crazy stuff, and you automatically, like, your heart kind of drops, and you're like, this isn't good.
Yeah. It's definitely a sad, like, I think it's the way that they make the player, like, literally read the letter twice. Like, it makes you realize how somber it is, kind of. They could have just had, this is a letter from your wife or your family, and it happened so recently in game time that you would have realized what letter it was. But I think the fact that, I'm pretty sure, right, they go through it completely, like, in scrolling through the letter twice, that you really start to feel sad. You think that, something bad happened for sure, and you start to, your mind starts to race a little bit, like, what's happening, what's going, just like it probably would for Flint, as his character's reading it.
But at the same time, like, it's a video game, so you're just like, all right, I got to go back out there, beat something up, and save my family.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
I just knocked the crap out of this flying mouse, so I can take on anything. And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, all right, let's do this. Yeah. I'll punch a pig man.
Okay. So immediately it's back into the. You'll punch a pig man. Okay, so immediately it's back into the forest to look for Hinawa and the twins. So why don't you guys talk about what happens next? Since it was your first time, and it's a pretty powerful moment. Several moments, I think. So especially this scene at a campfire.
Seth, take it.
Okay. Yeah, the campfire scene, I think that was actually the next thing I kind of, as I was playing, I contacted Michael about, because, it's just, that, I mean, so far, that was definitely the moment in the game where I was like, I was amazed. There was so much emotion conveyed in that part, and it showed a really deep connection between all the characters, when you realize that they're, Flint is, well, I guess I can say what happens, but he basically finds out that, his wife was murdered. And, he kind of loses it, as one would. and that he needs to be restrained from going too crazy and hurting too many people, so they have to knock him out.
And it happens right after he finds his sons too. Like
right,
they're basically watching this.
Yeah, they're sitting there at the campfire watching him do it, and it's just you feel for the guy and you understand his actions, and then you feel bad, and then it's I don't know, it was tough to watch almost. It was really good, a good moment though.
Yeah, I think there's a real sense of compassion that you get too from the friends, even as they're sort of being attacked and again, like restraining him, knocking him out. Like you can tell that they're doing it because they care about him, not because they think he's a menace that needs to be stopped or something like that.
Right. Yeah, they don't just hate the guy. It shows how much compassion they do have. It's really good.
And like, I didn't necessarily like how it happened, but the way Bronson tells him.
Yeah, like, that part's a little.
And I don't know if it's the translation.
I think that it's actually intentional. It's intentional. Like it's sort of. It's sorry to interrupt, but it's like intentionally.
It throws you off a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
Well, because Bronson comes and he's like, "Hey, Flint," he's like, "I got good news and bad news," and he's like, "Well, the good news is, I found this great Drago thing, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be great. It'll be great for a weapon. The bad news is, it was inside your wife. It pierced your wife's heart, and she's dead." And it's just like, that I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah.
And yeah, then Flint loses it, and that scene's great. Like everything you said. I mean, he takes up this wood from the campfire, and he's swinging it like crazy, and just trying to let out all of his anger and emotion and sorrow, and he knocks a couple people out first, right?
Yeah, he does.
And yeah, then a couple people try to restrain him. He breaks free. Then is it Lighter that knocks him out?
Mm-hmm. Because he's got the stick, I think, or the wood.
Yeah, the 2x.
And it's great. It's just a really powerful scene.
Yeah, that. I'm glad you brought that up because I was. You said it was Bronson, right?
Yeah, I believe it was Bronson.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up if you guys didn't, but one thing that I appreciate about these games is this one specifically is that it mixes in humor with the sort of traditional doom and gloom and apocalypse of RPGs. But this specific moment was one where I don't know if I was on board with it. But that said, it's still that's its own way of doing it, and that's something I really appreciate.
Right. Yeah.
And it doesn't. Agreed. In the end, it doesn't take away from that moment.
Right. Well, it sort of gives you the joke first, and then it goes into the really emotional moment.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it would have worked the other way around.
But this is just one of those things that wouldn't work in any other medium either. It wouldn't work.
True.
In a movie, It wouldn't work in a book. It wouldn't work in real life. That's for sure. But so then things go from bad to worse. Hinawa has died, and Flint in jail for his outburst at the campfire. And while he's stuck in his cell, which is the first time Kazumele's jail has ever been used, by the way, the rest of the town is at Hinawa's funeral without him.
Yeah, bummer. So sad.
I mean, it just feels absurd to me at that moment. I mean, how is that even something that would go through anybody's thought process? Like, Flint lashed out, let's keep him in jail, and then we'll bury his wife, and then by the time he's calmed down, we'll let him out, and then, I mean, what did you guys think about that?
I mean, do you think that was done just for sake of storytelling within the game? Like, how to explain him getting out at all? Or do you think it was actually, like, they wanted... I mean, because nothing really...
I have to say, honestly, my thought on it is that this is a town that has never once before had to deal with any kind of tragedy. again, they've never even used their jail. And they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he doesn't. I don't think he says anything though about it. Like, does he? Is there a moment where he's like,
No,
because you get out and then you have to just go on your next errands. I don't think he ever says like, why the heck didn't you get me out for this?
If you noticed, whatever character you're playing as doesn't actually have a voice at that time, right? At least Flint never actually says anything when you're playing as him until the next chapter. Have you guys noticed that?
I don't know.
I guess yeah. When you're playing as
no, I mean in general, yeah, but I don't know if there are like specific moments where that gets broken.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But I thought that was interesting too, just that whole idea that they did that. Yeah.
Okay, so Klaus shows up, helps Flynn escape just in time to make it to the end of the funeral, and the entire town is there, and it's a pretty powerful scene. And one of the things I love about it is that, you know, if you're not one of those people who kind of breaks the momentum in an RPG story and wanders around town talking to everyone like you could have done earlier when the fire was raging, you now have pretty much the entire town together, and you could talk to all of them and really appreciate how different each of them is, how they're all, you know, as we were saying earlier, how each of them is related to each other. And I realized that we're dealing with a fan translation that might not be 100% in line with Itoi's intentions for the characters, but I really do think that the characters have been just beautifully represented in this translation, and you get a real sense of the community among them at this funeral scene.
Yeah, like no matter, it still goes with the first part where you're running towards the fire and like everybody's kind of banding together to, you know, fix the situation. It's also kind of the same way that they're holding the funeral. They always seem like they're a group that tries to help out one another in times of need, like above all else. Except when something like crazy happens, like Flint's outburst, you know, they don't know how to handle that. But for the most part, it always seems like they're trying their best to keep the community together and be there for one another.
And you can sort of see that how they accept that he's just out of jail now.
Yeah, they're just like, oh,
yeah.
Cool. Well, you're out. I guess you figured out what you needed to while you're in there, and we're happy to have you again.
Yeah.
So the rest of the chapter is basically Flint searching for Klaus, who has disappeared in the mountains, apparently intending to kill the Drago that killed Hinawa, and that's basically the vibe at the end of the chapter with, like I mentioned earlier, the script pretty much flipped. The balance between man and nature completely disrupted. You've now got this family that has vowed to kill one of these creatures they were playing with earlier that morning. And I don't know about you guys, but that tonal shift just completely caught me off guard.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it was intentional, you know, showing them. I mean, I think you realize later on in the game that, you know, there's these people trying to change the attitude and the goals of this town. And so I think, you know, I didn't really realize it at the time as much until you kind of hear it later in the next couple of chapters where they're saying how they're trying to affect this town for whatever reason that you don't know yet completely. But showing how, you know, docile those creatures were, and then when you hear of one killing Hinawa, you know, my doubts started to trickle in there, and realize that maybe something had been altered or something had been awry, I guess, with those creatures, that they wouldn't have just done that.
It shows you like how the game develops other characters outside of just the main character you're playing as, because I think showing having the kids there when Flint has that outburst, I think you can kind of see how both those characters would take it. You know, like Klaus and Lucas, you already kind of have a idea of their personalities, and I think seeing that, you can almost understand what each one is probably thinking at that point. And Klaus is doing by going after this Drago is like you could tell the outburst and the news of his mother dying is making him take action, whereas Lucas is kind of trying to deal with his sorrow, like with himself and the community. Klaus kind of just wants revenge.
By the way,
Yeah.
I always have pronounced it Klaus too. I didn't think it was very American, so I made the conscious choice to say Klaus on the podcast. Just so you know,
instead of claws.
Instead of Klaus, I'm really trying here, guys. Just so you know. Okay, so before we move on to Chapter 2, I do want to discuss the other unexpected element of this story, which is the Magypsies. I didn't skip them on purpose earlier, I was just trying to lead the discussion somewhere specific, but I do think that they're pretty crucial to any discussion of this game because, I mean, besides the fact that they're these incredibly powerful beings that are basically the Tom Bombadils of the Mother universe, watching the ages pass in their own separate lands, not really getting involved with what's going on with humanity, but obviously capable of doing great things. I really do think that the Magypsies are the number one reason we haven't seen this game localized yet. They're these effeminate, catty, vain, just really endearing and hilarious transsexual men, older men, dressed very fashionably, but with a very obvious 5 o'clock shadow, and beards in some cases, and they're overweight, and you know they don't have some of them don't have very feminine body types, and they're representative of a third gender that is just way more commonly accepted in Japanese culture than it is here in the U.S. And I think Nintendo of America is terrified of them.
Interesting. I mean, I could see that, I guess, unfortunately. I could understand why that would be the case.
Well, Nintendo of America is, I think, just a really conservative company. They don't want to worry about, they don't want to become what a lot of parents see as what every other game company has become, which is, peddling, quote, filth. That said, Bayonetta.
Right. I mean, they did have that, gender situation with Tamagotchi Life that they didn't, want to deal with.
Yeah, but that wasn't a situation where a parent would buy this game. Most parents wouldn't buy the game and be like, where are the gay relationships? Versus,
that's true.
Versus had they been there from the beginning, or had there been options for, trans dressing or whatever, a family might very well have complained to Nintendo about it, or at least that's the fear of Nintendo. I think that they don't give their audience enough credit for how progressive a lot of us are, but as far as attitudes about that stuff. But
yeah, I mean they never have really done that. I mean, even in games like Animal Crossing or Fantasy Life, there's clear men and women clothes or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think that is a sad reason, but I think it's true. That's a good point. You know, it'd be interesting though if that would be the one reason holding them back, because they are a part in that first chapter, but they're not huge. I mean, they are there, but
it's a real short area.
Yeah.
I love the music in their I can't remember the name of
their tent.
Well, no, the specific Magypsy, the seashell that she lives in. I just can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what Aeolia. I'm looking.
It might have been.
I'm looking it up right now. Quick, anybody? No.
Magypsies.
Magypsies. Aeolia. That's who it is. Yeah.
You kind of talked about them being like the very powerful beings that just kind of do their own thing and watch the world turn. But they kind of in the game, in this story, they do take a part by kind of guiding you to where Klaus is. And
oh yeah, for sure. And they do take.
They say they teach him, right, the psi powers. So it's like,
which in a way,
I don't know if they're gonna come back into the story in any way. I don't know if you want to say yes.
Yeah,
or no
they'll
to
come
this.
in. They'll come back in.
Okay.
I do think one of the things, by the way, about psi, since you brought it up, that I always find interesting is how they sort of parallel it with adolescence and puberty. And so I think that it's interesting, because they start to sweat when they're learning a new move, and they can't run. They're low on energy. Maybe they're probably growing pimples, and then suddenly they know how to throw fire with their mind. So
yeah,
and that's pretty much what I think. That's what puberty feels like for a lot of people. But what I think is interesting about the Magypsies teaching it to Lucas, I think, is actually another thing that Nintendo might not know how to handle, because it's transsexual men.
Yeah, it kind of seems weird when they're talking about it.
Yeah, it almost seems like, is this okay?
Right.
Or not?
I got that vibe when I was reading. I was like, all right, it could be kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
But it's all good.
Yeah. It's all in good fun.
No, I mean it turns out okay. They're not doing anything. They're not abusing him.
We didn't really talk about how the chapter ended.
We didn't?
No. With Flint battling the giant T-Rex thing.
Oh yeah, I just mentioned that was the plan. They're gonna go.
And like all you find is shoes. Flint never finds.
Technically, they show it to the viewer, but he never finds the kid.
Right.
You see Klaus down kind of. I'm assuming he died down in the valley, but Flint doesn't find him. But maybe he's not dead. Who knows?
There is that nice little touch though of when the Drago is going down, the little baby one shows up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is nice. A little gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's move on to chapter 2. So Chapter 2 changes the script again, puts several characters we've previously met in the spotlight, and introduces us to an important new one. What do you guys think about Duster and Wes?
They're funny. They're
yeah, Wes is funny.
And I can't get in a particular age for Duster. I don't know if that's in the guide, but he kind of in some ways he seems like the lazy bum that won't leave home, but he's got tons of skills and he just needs to put them to good use.
I always think of him as in his late 30s and still living at home.
Yeah, I could see that. Totally. That works for me.
But he could also be like 22,
He could. And Wes is just he's so mean to him, but you could tell like he cares about him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if my son or is it grandson, right?
Your grandson? What about your grandson?
No, Duster Wes's grandson?
No, it's his son.
Or just the teacher? Okay. Yeah, if my son was 40 and living at home, I'd probably say nothing but belligerent and mean things to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things you notice is Duster's got this perpetual limp, and you wonder, was Wes partly responsible for that? Did he give it to him directly? Yeah, I love their relationship. It's rough. I had kind of a rough relationship with my dad when I was younger. Certainly not that way now, but it wasn't like this. But I can appreciate the way that he might think that, even though he's completely wrong, Wes might think that verbally abusing Duster might actually make Duster a better person somehow. If he just yells at him enough, like maybe he'll snap out of his being a lazy bum and use those master thief skills, put them to good use. But yeah, you're always kind of wondering about Duster because he does have this limp and because he seems like a little bit dim. You're always kind of wondering, okay, was he actually capable of pulling off this little heist that Wes is sending him on?
Yeah.
And this heist has like nothing to do with anything else that's happened so far, right, guys?
Yeah,
doesn't seem like it.
Chapter 2, and you have no idea what's going on.
It doesn't discuss the events in Chapter 1 at all, really.
What is it that he's off to do?
He's off to steal something from the castle.
Osohe
Castle.
Yeah.
Osohe Castle. But yeah, he's off to steal something for Wes, or Wes wants him to steal it.
Yeah, and Wes tells him he'll know it when he sees it.
He'll know it when he sees it.
There's no clear-cut vision of what it is you're supposed to get. If it's an item, if it's a person. I mean, I guess you kind of think it's an item, but
yeah,
there's no real clues. And I thought it was really interesting that it really does kind of just start with their own story. Even though Duster and Wes were both in Chapter 1, there's no real callbacks to that. And that's really kind of disorienting. It's kind of strange. Yeah, time. You don't even know. It could be before this happened.
Right.
Until you start getting going.
Yeah, you actually realize that this whole thing is actually just an extended setup for the reintroduction of the pig masks. Because Duster doesn't actually find the right treasure. He goes back home. Wes, I think, smacks him around a little bit and says, "All right, we're gonna, I'm going with you this time, and we'll find this thing, you little idiot." And then, as you're heading back to the castle, you realize that the pig masks have basically driven their tanks right through the cemetery up to the gates of the castle, and they're up to something. We don't know what it is yet, but you can sort of obviously tell that the village is about to go through some more changes that aren't for the best, and
and you obviously get the feeling like they're going after what you were sent to get. At least that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, sure, and that actually, the treasure that they find is important, and that comes into play more later. But I think what's more important about this is, what's more interesting, I should say, about this is this foreshadow when you're heading to Osohe Castle alone, the first time actually, when you're just Duster, and you bump into Butch, who's one of the villagers, and he's hunched over this huge bag, which he explains to Duster is money, which nobody in the village has ever heard of this before, but he doesn't know what it's good for, but he knows that he traded it to a mysterious stranger in exchange for some pigs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just this foreign concept in this village where, you know, even the shop that they have, everything is free. If you need something for your pantry or whatever, you just go and they've got it on the counter. If they've got it, you just take it.
Yeah,
that was something like I started talking about at the beginning of this podcast. The first time I went into the shop, I was like, wait, I don't even have any money. I can't get anything. And nope, because you don't need anything the first time you go in. The guys are just like, here, go ahead, take whatever you need. And that was really awesome. And right there, I mean, I feel like in that moment, if you're kind of just running through the game, you might not really understand what this town is about. But I think right there, it shows exactly what this town is about. Like, it's completely they live off of each other and nature, and they don't worry about like the things that stress normal people out that really nobody should be stressing about.
The troubles of the modern world had not touched this town at the beginning of the game.
Right.
It was really interesting. Like, I thought that was cool how they handled that.
Right.
And it definitely foreshadows something coming up later.
So we head back to Osohe Castle with Wes along for the journey this time to ensure Duster doesn't screw things up again. And we finally catch up with this mysterious new character we caught a glimpse of earlier, who wants to talk a bit about Kumatora.
You know, I think that she's, well, obviously, yeah, she's mysterious. You don't really know who she is or what she's doing in the castle, what she's looking for. But you guys kind of decide to join forces, so to speak, I guess.
Well, I think the more interesting thing, besides just her being mysterious, is that she's actually a tomboy, and I don't think that you...
She's very masculine, yes.
Well, not necessarily masculine, but...
Well, that's what it said.
But
that's what it says in her, like, name section.
Yeah.
It says that she's a very masculine... Not that she looks it, but...
I don't know if the game has mentioned this at all yet, but she's actually raised by the Magypsies, which is one of the reasons that she has psi powers.
I think it does mention.
I did not know that.
Yeah. There's not really much to say about Kumatora yet, but
she's great in battle. Like, let me tell you, without those psi abilities and ice, like, Duster would be nowhere.
Yeah, you basically have to use a combination of his thief tools and her psi to get through some of those battles. Some of them are pretty tough. Especially that composer ghost. I can't remember his name, but
Mr. Passion.
Yeah, Mr. Passion. If you don't remember, I mean, if you haven't done it already and you don't know like how to deal with him, that can be tough.
I was stuck on him for like an entire day. And I like picked up and put down the game like 5 or 6 times because I was like, I cannot beat this guy.
I think this time was the first time where I just breezed through him. It just wasn't even a big deal. I just threw a bunch of bombs at him and used I forget which tool, but there's a tool where you can either make him laugh or make him turn around. Can't remember which one, but basically you keep doing that.
I think it's the
laughing one, right?
No, this is Siren Beetle. I think
right.
Turns him around.
Okay. So actually, the heist ends up being important and related to the bigger story being told because it leads us to the hummingbird egg, which apparently it somehow contains either the world's greatest hope or its greatest calamity within its shell, but we'll save that for a later discussion because it actually comes back into play later on. Maybe in Chapter 4, maybe Chapter 5, I can't quite remember. But Chapter 2 ends with Duster's disappearance, so you've got another character going missing, and it actually further hints at the changes that are coming to the village, foreshadowing Chapter 3, actually. You've got this strange peddler in the village now, and his pet monkey, and that's who we're going to focus on. That's who you focus on for Chapter 3, so let's go right into it after this song. Okay, so Chapter 3. What do you guys think about Facade? He's pretty nasty, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to end him pretty much from the very beginning of Chapter 3. Like, I cannot stress enough how much
I
hate him.
He's a jerk face, big time. It sucks. It's you don't actually, I guess, technically play as him, but it's hilarious and totally screwed up that like you have to have him in your party.
So he's got this little remote control, and anytime he feels like it, which is all the time basically, he just pushes this little button and this collar on Salsa. Salsa is the name of his pet monkey that you play as. Every time he hits
nonstop.
Every time he hits this button, it zaps the monkey, and yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I got to actually quite a few times, pretty much every time I play this game, I get to a point where I just start doing the wrong thing over and over to see if it ever stops, but of course it doesn't. And there's this part where he sends you on a task to do something in Tasmily, and he says, if you get this done in 23 minutes, I'll give you a banana. But basically every time you go back to him, he says, oh, too bad, you took 25 minutes, and then he eats the banana in front of you, and then he zaps you. It's like, oh man,
yeah,
I just hate him. So now we're controlling this little monkey named Salsa, who's being forced to distribute these happy boxes, which are just TVs. They're pink TVs throughout Tasmily, while Facade, his owner, hawks things like progress and prosperity and happiness and money throughout the village. And this is one of the slimmest chapters as far as big events that happen, but it's also one of my favorites just to talk about because there's so much thematic stuff going on here and so much foreshadowing. It reminds me in It's a Wonderful Life of that nightmare sequence where Bedford Falls has turned into Pottersville, where people of the community basically became duped by this villain who was profiting on their gullibility and their vulnerability. And, say what you will about progress, but Tasmania had a good thing going before these pig masks showed up and sowed chaos throughout the community. And now they're trading fresh air for televisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then Butch's money goes, mysteriously missing from the well where he hid it. And then you've now got the villagers suspicious of one another and distrusting each other. And it's spreading throughout the town, and they don't even know what money is. They don't know why they should care about this stuff. And obviously, none of them has taken it because, as Austin's been saying, this is a community that thrives on each other. This aspect of the tale grows and grows. And it's not really something I've talked about before when I've talked about Mother3 with you guys, but discuss.
It's one of those things where it reminds you of your life now in a lot of ways, like the world you're living in now. You're like, oh man, like progress, prosperity, happiness, money, and TVs and all this stuff. Like that's what I'm living in right now. And you're just like, oh no, oh no. Am I becoming a
Right.
face mask man? I don't know. It's interesting how it reflects kind of the society we're in right now.
You know, it's funny. Me and Dee Dee were watching the Wonder Years the other day, and they were just playing baseball. You know, with their friends out in the street, and I said to her, you know, I probably would have been.
Who does that anymore?
I probably would have been your prototypical American kid outside playing baseball every day if it wasn't for, you know, this Japanese company addicting me to video games. And, you know, now I'm inside all the time, and I don't like it, and I always want to be outside more. And I do go outside from time to time, and I have grand adventures, etc. But, yeah, all this just technology and things that we don't need, ruining things, and it just really bums me out how these outside people came in. It seems like specifically just to screw things up for these people, but of course we don't know yet where this is going.
We don't know yet. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Soon
definitely
we'll
a downer of a chapter.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But you know, on the other hand, you do get to collect dung.
Your hands all sticky.
Yeah, well, you know.
I like that if you try and use it, it just says, made your hands sticky. That's it.
It's kind of funny.
Have you tried to use it in battle? Have you done that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. If you try and use it in battle, it says, you used the dung. Your hands, it just made your hands sticky.
It's kind of funny if you think about it, because you start out, you know, in that chapter with Salsa, you start out in the desert, and as you're fighting, you're collecting dung, and you're making the choice to give the dung to the dung beetles. And it's actually something that really makes the dung beetle happy. Like, he's just so happy to have this stuff. But then, you know, shortly after that, you're forced to give these TVs to people because they've been convinced that will make them happy, versus just getting the things that they know will make them happy. I don't know.
I liked how this chapter, though, it overlapped the second chapter. We didn't really talk about that much, but you see where the money came from. You see what happened to the money, and
you bump into Duster.
That stuff was kind of in chapter 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked how it.
And that does a nice job of.
It was bringing the story together.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It does a nice job of establishing the timeline too, and you start to see how it's all put together and how the stories overlap and how this affected that and this affected that, and it's a really nice way of tying it all together. Where between each chapter, you know, you're kind of getting to be like, oh, what's this story have to do with that one, or this one with that one, and then they're slowly kind of showing you, which is nice.
Yeah, so I really like the end of chapter 3, when the Drago shows up again with Lucas in tow, and they just kind of dispatch Facade and the Pigmask. They just kind of knock Facade out of town for now, and you kind of.
I could just picture Michael like jumping up and down, screaming at his Game Boy Advance, like, "Yeah, get some."
Yeah, no, it was more like just a kind of satisfied smugness.
Or that.
But you know, I like this because you get a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
After all this sadness and darkness is hitting the town, you know, Lucas shows up with the Drago. You know, they're not only does that tell you that Lucas is getting a little braver, but he's also he's also made peace with the Dragos because he has the wisdom to realize it wasn't their fault, which is not how his father and brother react, and I think that he's stronger for it. So that's as far as we've played all together, the three of us so far. What do you guys think so far? Where do you think the story's going from here? Anything that you're hoping will happen? Things you're looking forward to? Events you want to guess at?
I'm hoping that I get to play as Lucas in Chapter 4 because I just love his T-shirt. And
well, for the sake of loving that T-shirt, I'll tell you right now, you do.
Yes.
In Chapter 4.
And I'm happy that I finally learned what the rope snake is used for that he uses in Smash Bros.
Oh, right.
And I'm hoping that you don't have to be Facade again. And
well, just Salsa, right? Do you actually?
Yeah, I like Salsa.
You don't actually control Facade though, do you? I can't remember.
No, you don't. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping I just don't have to have him around because it's just a jerk. But yeah, I'm hoping I get to be Lucas, which you confirmed, and I'm excited to just see what. I mean, so far each chapter continues to surprise me how it begins and where it's going and how it ties it in. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this next one ties everything together, or exposes more of why what's happening is happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see if this town specifically, you kind of figure out why it's happening to these guys. I'm kind of interested to see if they keep changing up the characters throughout the chapters too, because I mean, my only experience with Mother3 was that Lucas was in Smash Brothers, so when I picked up the game, I figured I'd be him the entire game, and that's not how it works.
Well, now you know why I made a Flint character.
Yeah.
I love Flint. He's one of my favorite video game characters.
It's all coming together.
Yeah, it's one thing I'll just say because I kept thinking it. Is usually I really dislike RPGs where I am not the same character throughout the game because I keep getting items or learning abilities and then I lose them.
Right.
And I get really frustrated by that because it, but for this one, it's just the chapters have been, really well put together in their length and not really even focusing on items and abilities as much as just getting through and figuring out what works in the story, and so it hasn't affected me as much as most games do.
Well, you probably have also picked up on some hints really that you're probably gonna be playing as most of these characters again, if not all of them.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, especially because you know from playing Smash Brothers that Lucas is a Sai wielder.
Correct.
And I mean, why would you even bother learning new moves with Kumatora if you weren't going to have her come back? But as far as the other characters, we'll leave that up to you guys to discover on your own. I will say that Chapter 4 is, honestly, I love the game all the way through, but Chapter 4 is another personal favorite of mine, specifically because of some great musical moments. But you guys will discover that very soon.
Cool.
So.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you've stayed with us this far, thanks so much for joining us as we make our way through Mother3 together. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, stay tuned. We'll be covering Chapters 4 and 5 in another week or two.